That men do not learn very much from the lessons of history is the most important of all the lessons that history has to teach. Aldous Huxley, Collected Essays. Good evening, folks. Sorry you guys did not get to see me yesterday. The day before was a long one. I could typically do the usual, but tonight, pardon me, I'm going to start with kind of some of my thoughts, and this is the culmination of it. And so we're not really going to see videos tonight, other people's videos. We may see other people's works, and if you want to revisit them, they'll be in the description box below. Now, or shoot, did I put the right stuff in the... Hold on, let me double check something. Just want to make sure I actually posted it in there. I'm pretty sure I did. Yes, I did. Okay. In case anyone wants to join. Okay, so starting off, I like to ask questions. So, my hair's all fuzzy. Alright, so first question is... here I go again. Alright. Why are there 365 days a year instead of 360? That's kind of a common question. Because if you think about it, right? A circle, or you could think of this as an orbit. I'm sorry, this is not a very good circle. I'm just drawing it. Is 360 degrees, right? It's the full angle of a circle. Half of a circle is 180 degrees. And then, of course, if you do that, you're going to get 90 degrees there, basic, and 270 degrees there. Basic math, I guess. Maybe it's more than math. That's not a very good. Let's blur it up there. Son of a gun. I'm not good there. All right, so if we break it down, we know that that's 45 degrees. Oh shit, I am doing this all wrong. We gotta do it like a time. Aha. So good. I didn't have to show my messiness. Excuse me. Now, how many days in a how many months are in a year? There's 12, just like a clock, right? Think of this as a clock. I am not at the top of my game. All right, this is 12 o'clock, right? And then this is going to be 30 degrees. This is 1 o'clock. This is 60 degrees. 2 o'clock. 3 o'clock, rock. All right. I really, as much as I kind of like the thought of drawing digitally, I think it might be better if I just had a whiteboard. Not that things would be that great anyway. All right, so you get the it keeps resetting itself. That's the problem. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Anyways, sorry for my bad drawing abilities and my coughing. All right, so you've got 12 months in a year. You've got 12 points, and if you divide 12 by 360, you get 30 degrees, 30 days, 30 days in a month. So that's kind of how our calendar is kind of been set up. People ask me, why are you studying ancient history? What's that got to do with anything today? Well, we use the calendar system and the hour calendar system, yeah, and a time system since way back in the day. You think with all this electronics, technology, etc., science, mathematicians, we would have something better, maybe more accurate, but no, we keep adjusting things on the fly. Why? Why? My daughter always asks why. All right. So where do we get the 5 extra days from? I mean, okay, so we've got 365. I need to fix this thing. Days in a year. Right? Now, why isn't it 360? So a full and for people today, and we'll get to it pretty quick here. So this has been in for such a long time, 365 days in a year. Why didn't the ancients say it's 360? Well, this is when we get into Egyptian gods. They're like, what? I thought we were talking about where the 5 days, extra days come from, mathematically. Well, let's break it down. So we've got here Osiris, Horus, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. And in this article, in this little snippet at cultphysics.com, in claiming, so there's a story, and we'll get to it, but in the breakdown, it's pretty much 5 children were born, new gods to enter the world. Each god was born on one of the 5 extra days. Their names were Isis, Osiris, Set, Nephthys, and Horus the elder. So they just go, well, we know it's 360 degrees make a full circle, and that the Earth doesn't really orbit the sun in 360 days, so we're going to add 5 extra days because of 5 of the deities. It's not based on math, but just based on, okay, we know it's somehow they knew it was elliptical, an elliptical orbit, because now who throughout all this time in ancient history, they're going by a calendar 365 degrees, even though that they know that a full complete circle non-elliptical is 360. Yet they added 5 days, and somehow that's coincidentally matched up with Johannes Kepler, mathematician. So he was born on December 27th, 1571. So all through the ancients, it took almost 450 years, give or take, I don't know, until someone said, hey, it's not a full circular orbit, it's an elliptical orbit. In Kepler's laws, he's got laws, law of orbits. All planets move in elliptical orbits with the sun at one focus. So then he figured out, hey, okay, so it's not a full circle, so it's elliptical, and thus 365 days. So it took, so coincidentally, ancients kind of knew enough math to know that a full circle was 360 days. That a full circle was 360 360 degrees, but to make a year, they added 5 extra days. And those 5 extra days were based off of 5 deities that were born. Oh, come on. And it didn't take until... Come on, stupid. Oh, I'm holding upside down. It didn't take until about, what did they say? 450 years ago, till someone said, hey, those 5 extra days... So the ancients equals 5 births. And then around 450 years ago, there's a guy named Kepler. Okay. So science and math kind of finally caught up and said, hey, we have 365 days in a year because of an elliptical orbit, not because of just 5 deities that were born, thus they added the 5 extra days in a year. You know, all that nonsense didn't make any sense. Yet, coincidentally, the ancients were right. Now, I just think that was just worth sharing. That was incredible. So where does Julius Caesar fit in? Well, there's a lot of stuff that I want to actually talk about Julius Caesar. There's 2 articles that I want to present. Who knows? Maybe they copied off each other, or maybe they copied off of some commentaries on the Gallic War by Julius Caesar, and of course one of the books. This article by 10 Major Accomplishments of Julius Caesar by Anirudh, November 7, 2016 on learnodo-newtonic.com. Follow the seasons. The Roman calendar was not only inaccurate but also manipulated for political purposes, with intercalations not occurring systematically. Julius Caesar replaced this calendar with one based on the Egyptian calendar, which was regulated by the sun. He set the length of the year to 365.25 days by adding an intercalary day at the end of February every 4th year, which people called leap year. The Julian calendar started on 1st January 45 BC and remained the predominant calendar in most of Europe until the Gregorian calendar, most widely used in today's world, slightly refined by making a 0.002% correction in the length of the year. Okay, so this states Julius Caesar decided that, hey, Roman calendar is wrong. Instead of 355 days, and he didn't say it's 360 days. Why would you put 360 days? I mean, if you're doing the math, it would be a full circle. But he based it on the Egyptian calendar out of 365 days, but he added a 0.25 day, a quarter of a day per year, so the 4th year would catch up and, had the 366th day. And this was 1500 years before Kepler. 1500 years before Kepler, and Julius Caesar goes, hey, it's an elliptical, plus to make sure that we actually catch up by doing the math, the 4th year will be a leap year. For 1500 years before Kepler, Julius Caesar did this. And he's an amazing person. We could go back into his assassination. Did you know, on a side note, that Julius Caesar ordered that property must be accepted for prepayment as pre-war value and reinstated a previous law which forbade the holding of more than 60,000 sesterces in cash by any one person. He also passed a law which placed restrictions on ostentatious attire, funeral costs, and banquets. And he took popular measures to relieve the poor. He founded new settlements for the veterans of his army. He distributed land to around 20,000 poor families that had 3 or more children. To deal with widespread unemployment, he offered people jobs in public works like the reparation of ancient cities. He mandated that large landowners were to have at least 1/3 of their laborers as freemen instead of slaves, thus reducing unemployment. He counseled a whole year of rent for low to moderate dwellings, giving much needed relief to poor tenants. He increased duties on luxury imports to make the rich pay for the lavish lifestyles and to encourage domestic production. Caesar also canceled the interest due to the beginning of the Civil War, which ultimately eliminated about 1/4 of all outstanding debt. Do you think he got assassinated because, and guess who assassinated him? Senators. Do you think he got assassinated probably because some of these things, or just because he got into power and too much power? Well, that didn't stop a lot of dictators in the future, did it? Especially those as Caesars in the future. Let's see the difference between those dictators and what they did compared to what Julius Caesar did. Makes you think, huh? Maybe ask a couple more questions. Hi, Eric. Hello, and you're welcome. Okay, so, and of course you can read this one. It's kind of going through the same thing. Of course, we don't really listen. We don't really hear much about Julius Caesar, do we? He took his army and made himself dictator. Bad. And then as dictator, he made the rich pay for their lavishness and gave a lot to the poor. Damn. Sounds a lot like another JC, Julius Caesar, another person that has the abbreviations of JC. It's like, what would Jesus Christ do if he was a dictator or ruler? Makes you think a bit, doesn't it? Okay, enough of that side note. Occult physics. I don't want to steal too much of this person's stuff. Otherwise, it's borrowed. It's borrowed. I'm just talking about it. So he states, it's a quick summary form. In earlier stages of creation, when new cosmological deities were still coming up into being, the sky goddess Nut became pregnant due to an illicit encounter with the earth god Geb. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. Maybe it's Jeb. Upon becoming aware of this, the supreme sun god Ra felt threatened, suspecting that Nut's offspring might dispose him from power. As a result, Ra, is it Ray? Ra, whatever, cast a curse upon Nut, preventing her from giving birth on any day during the year. And indeed, at this time, the earth possessed exactly 360 days in a year, as the universe was in a state of great order and harmony. Pardon me. And so above the central figure is Shu, who's holding up Nut, his daughter, who's arching over him. Geb, her lover, is the earth god lying upon the ground. In Egyptian myth, as depicted here, Shu is seen forcibly separating Nut and Geb from union. At some point, he obviously fails, as Nut and Geb are united, and Nut becomes pregnant. Coming to the aid of the Nut, wisdom god Thoth devised a plan to outmaneuver Ray, or Ra. I'd say Ra. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. Thoth presented himself to the moon deity Khonsu, who was a great lover of the game Senate. I don't know if I'm saying this right, of course. And he challenged him to a series of matches. The stakes were, however, were quite unusual. Thoth proposed that if he won, his prize would be a measure of the moon's light, 1/72 to be exact. Khonsu was so confident, and that's an odd number, huh? 1 divided by 72. Khonsu was so confident in his abilities that he accepted. However, much to his surprise, Thoth thoroughly outplayed him in the whole series. In claiming his prize, Thoth took the light that he had won from the moon and gave it to Nut. This transfer caused the Earth's orbit to shift and increase its length from 360 days per year to some 365. Now, it's just a coincidence that a story came to be and it described the elliptical orbit of the Earth's orbit around the sun pretty accurately for these people way back in the day. So it was like a guess. It's like, hey, we know a full circle has a 360-degree angle, but we're going to add 5 days because of the story. And the story doesn't get into anything else. It's just a story. And it took a couple of centuries later until Julius Caesar said, okay, none of this Roman calendar of 355 days in a year. We're going to take the Egyptian calendar, 365 days a year, and add a 0.5 every year, because that way every 4th year will be a leap year, and that'll make everything kind of line up exactly. And that was 1500 years before Johannes Kepler came up with his laws of physics and laws of elliptical orbits. And that's where we get our information in the scientific community, where you'll get it in your mainstream corporate media, right? But you don't get to hear the rest. Isn't that interesting? And it takes just someone to ask questions and think. And hey, a lot of people call me a loser, an idiot, I'm dumb, I'm not smart. Well, if I can figure this out, that means anybody can. And I like taking those compliments. All right. So 5 children were born. So Nut was able to give birth on extra days, as they were not part of the true Earth year, i.e. the 360 cursed days of Ra. 5 children were born, new gods to enter the world. Each god was born on one of the 5 extra days. Their names were Isis, Osiris, Set, Nephthys, and Horus the Elder. Now, in addition to the changes that took place respecting the Earth, the loss of the moon's light was no less significant to the moon itself, as the celestial body was greatly weakened and became smaller in the sky. Indeed, prior to its loss, it was a bright body and a visible emitter of light, much like the sun. Following the change, however, it ceased to continuously shine and was forced to go into hiding to periodically recuperate. It could only shine for a time before going dark, and thus the very phases of the moon, as we know them today, came into being. So that's that. So I pretty much am finished with my thing of where the 5 extra days came from. Well, if it was 365 days in a year, because the story of Thoth and his game. Isn't that just crazy? I mean, that's crazy. I know it's crazy. You guys are probably thinking I'm crazy for even thinking, what? 5 days of the year came from. I'm not saying it. The ancients are saying it. Okay? There's a differentiation between here, what I'm talking about. The ancients, the ancient Egyptians. It wasn't 360 days a year. It was. Or I guess they figured, and then they realized, hey, it's not 360 days in a year. It's 365. So how are we going to come up with the reasoning for that? Oh, because of the story of Thoth and Nut and Shu and Geb and a whole bunch of other stuff. That's why we got 365 days in a year, and then it got up to the point where Julius Caesar had to, in his dictatorship, and you know, if we didn't have his rule and a lot of the stuff that he came up with. Did you know, another side note, that Julius Caesar invented the newspapers? Try to debug that one from me. No, Ebon, you're wrong. You're wrong on this. You're wrong on that. You're wrong on everything. Okay, then show me any proof that I'm wrong. It should be easy to prove something is wrong. Obviously, right? That's what science is. Just prove that it's wrong. Therefore, gotcha. It's not that. Okay, so yeah, Julius Caesar. And then 1500s, after Julius Caesar, there was a scientific law from Johannes Kepler, who came up with the idea that the Earth's orbit was elliptical, which gives me more questions. Because if he had a thought that the Earth's orbit was elliptical around the sun, but they're using a Julian calendar still, and that there is this great discrepancy between Kepler and who's that other astronomer? Well, any other scientists of that day, what were they doing? Were they saying, hey, we got 365.25 days in a year? That's wrong, because obviously it's 360 days in a year, because the Earth is a complete circle, a complete circular orbit around, or the sun is the complete orbit around the Earth, or something crazy like that. Well, not crazy, I wouldn't say that. Nothing's crazy these days. So doesn't that kind of make you think a little bit? I mean, just think. They're arguing that the calendar was wrong if they just followed the calendar and just observed it. That's all they needed to do, and that's what Kepler did. He just observed it and saw, hey, this matches to the exact time of the other stars and all this other stuff, and there you go. 365 was about right, and it's an elliptical orbit, not 360 is what people would say. Yet 1500 years before that, Julius Caesar, who probably wasn't a mathematician or an astronomer, figured, hey, we'll just go with the Egyptian calendar, but we'll add a 0.25 for every year. How is he so accurate? We're still today, Julius Caesar, 2000, yeah, over 2000. It's almost 2100 years. Not quite. Over 2,000 years, we're using a calendar that he set up. And none of the scientists can prove him wrong. None of the mathematicians, none of the physicists. Everything is exact, in give or take a few bits. Doesn't that make you think in any bit? And where he came up with that calendar, where he came up with that 0.25, I don't really know. It must have been observation or something, but even way before that, for thousands of years, the Egyptian calendar was correct at 365, or pretty close. And the Romans got it wrong again at 355. Just outstanding. I mean, all you have to do is just follow the timeline. That's just follow the timeline. Okay, so I'm just going to end it with Thoth, the story of Thoth from catchpenny.org. I don't really know much about Thoth, but when I read this the first time and I read it fast, it seemed pretty cool. All right, so here it goes. Thoth was portrayed by the ancient Egyptians in various ways. Again, Thoth was the person who played Senet, S-E-N-E-T, Senat. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. And won, and therefore got 1/72nd a portion of the light of the moon in order to get Nut pregnant and to have those 5 kids. Okay, and therefore the extra 5 days of the year from 360. Okay, Thoth was portrayed, but I'm laughing because this is silly. It's silly, but it's true. That's why it's so silly, because it is true. Yeah, it's just coincidence, Ebon. I mean, come on. Anyone can make a guess that he's at 0.25 every year for 4th year become a leap year and to make it match up or something like that. Psh, I could have done that when I was in kindergarten, Ebon. Yeah, right. I looked around. I don't see anyone coming up with this connection. Why am I here to make this connection? Thoth was portrayed by the ancient Egyptians in various ways. Thoth sometimes assumed the shape of a baboon. For domestic use, effigies of Thoth as a baboon were made. There's an ode to Thoth where the god is addressed as a statuette studded with precious stones representing the god as a baboon. But whenever Thoth took action or made pronouncements, he appeared in human form with the head of an ibis. In hieroglyphic script, and among the emblems carried in temple processions, he was immediately recognizable whenever the ibis occurred. The ibis apparently expressed the essence of Thoth better than the baboon. The ibis, I want to make sure I pronounce that right. Ibis. Okay. I had a feeling I was getting it wrong. The ibis occurs on the 15th nome of Lower Egypt, whose capital occurs on the standard of the 15th nome of Lower Egypt. I have no idea what that means. Whose capital was called Hermopolis Parva in later days. The name I indicated Thoth was venerated in that nome. Thoth was worshipped in other Delta towns. Thoth is said to have identified with an ibis god in Hermopolis Parva. Boy in 1922, page 75. So this obviously has some what's that term? References. There you go. Thoth became the dominant god in Upper Egypt's Hermopolis Magna, or Town of 8. Plutarch's statement about the ibis attracted attention. The ibis destroyed noxious reptiles and set a standard for cleanliness. Ooh. The reptilians probably did not like Thoth. The ibis taught the priest the art of purgation, and it only drank from clean water sources. So the ibis was a typical combatant of hostile beings. He spelled hostile wrong. Plutarch wrote, Isis and Osiris, page 75. The ibis, which kills the deadly creeping things, was the first to teach men the use of medical purgations when they observed her employing clysters and being purged by herself. The most strict of the priests, thus this lustral water for purification from a place where the ibis has drunk. Maybe I just can't read, or the translation from Plutarch is a little weird. Okay, Egyptians often understood the essence of their gods through the epithets associated with them. Thoth, frequently called the son of Re. So it's Re, not Ra. Maybe they're the same. Oh my goodness, I'm pretty bad at this. Let me do Ra versus Re. Okay, also spelled Ra. Okay, they're the same. They just. Whew. I was like, what? There's someone else? Okay. Oh, man. You know, this is just what happens when, coming from sickness. Okay. A stunning pronouncement in the pyramid text, it is said of Thoth, you have no mother. Mysterious is name of Thoth as son of the stone who came forth from the 2 eggshells. This stone is the eggshell he split in two at his birth, which suggests the remnants of another creation account with Thoth as the creator god. Another strange announcement is Thoth emerged from the skull of Set after Horus had impregnated him. In the contendings of Horus and Set, Thoth is called the one who emerged from the skull. In ancient Egyptian, the word skull is reminiscent of the word judge, and Thoth often acted as a judge. Another strange statement about the birth of Thoth is contained in a late text from the Temple of Esna. Ra, embittered by the rebellion of mankind, sent Thoth out to crush the rebellion. The role is consistent with Thoth as a chastiser of evildoers. Pretty good. Thoth was also a peacemaker, and it was said of him, he makes peace between two combatants, Horus and Set. He dispels the sorrow of the older generation. He settles the discord of the younger generation. He catches the suffering of Isis about the death of Osiris, as though in a net. The god who promotes the state of satisfaction in the cosmos is Thoth. In the pyramid text, Thoth is called the one who signifies the peace of the gods. Thoth was considered one of the oldest gods. However, he is not part of the famous Heliopolitan Ennead. Sorry if I'm butchering that. He was accounted as one of the 10 members of the dynasty of gods who ruled Earth before earthly kings, Turin royal canon. Thoth's primacy is suggested in the fascinating story told by Plutarch, Isis and Osiris. Excuse me. That Hermes, i.e. Thoth, won 5 extra days for the year by playing a game, Senate, with Selene, the moon. These 5 extra days became the birthdays for the deities Osiris, Horus, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. Again, we're reiterating that. And this is kind of getting that from a story by Plutarch. Thoth was a benefit both to the gods and mankind. Thoth helped revive Osiris. He acted as Osiris's advocate during the trial. Thoth assisted Isis to rear Horus in the marshes. Thoth punished Set and all evildoers. Thoth was a legislator, judge, and scribe. He restored order and brought harmony to the world. He assisted mankind as a protector of the weak and of those whose property was violated. See, I like this deity. Interesting guy. Or thing, Ibis. An important task in the cosmos was ascribed to Thoth in the Shabaka text, or Memphite theology, which is usually called a Logos doctrine. According to the text, creation took place because the thought arose in the heart of the deity, and the tongue uttered that thought. The thought and the word were personified in the gods Horus and Thoth. That word is active in all living creatures, the gods, the people, the cattle, etc. The word brings forth all manner of food and nourishment. Thoth is therefore the safeguard and guardian of all the regulations of creation. Thoth makes justice triumphant in the world of man. That is interesting. Thoth was the inventor of the sacred writings. He was patron of the scribe. Mention is made of the hieroglyphic writings, the books of Thoth. The writers in the temple scriptoria were under the supervision of Thoth. Sacrificial rituals were said to be performed according to the writing that Thoth made for Osiris in the House of God's book, the text containing the lament of Isis and Nephthys about their murdered brother states. Thoth recites thine, Osiris hymns, and invokes thee with his spells. Thoth also played a role in the founding of temples. Mention is made of a temple which Ptah built with his fingers and which Thoth founded. Thoth's assistance to the deceased is well known from his presence recording the result of judgment at the scales. 2 spells in the BOD, I guess that means Book of Death? I have no idea. 95-96 state a purpose for the deceased to be by the side of Thoth. The deceased even yearns to be identified with Thoth. Thoth was the patron god of scribes, lord of the sacred writings, legislator, judge, recorder of decisions and pronouncements, arbiter of disputants, queller of noisy division, aid to those suffering injustice or sickness, founder of temples, personification of thought uttered, and restorer of order and harmony. He was a fitting god to be called twice greatest, thrice greatest, and even Trismegistus by the Greeks. How much of the Corpus Hermeticum can be traced back to the Egyptians is unclear, but the roots or Hermetic lore are certainly to be found in Ramessidi, Egypt, starting with the Memphite theology on the walls of the Ibis temple. Interesting. Again, I am not much of a I am a researcher now. I am a philosopher, I guess, and scientist. I am whatever it is that I need to be. And while it may be odd that I partake in these things, I find it odd that others do not. That they want to become a specialist within in life. It's like, I don't know. Maybe you're a nihilist and you don't care. Maybe you're religious and therefore whatever God that you believe in at the end says, hey, so what were you in your life? Oh, I was a very, very, very great carpenter, just like Jesus Christ. Oh, I was a very, very, very great businessman. I made millions of dollars. Billions even, I am the best of what I was, what everyone else could be, but I was the best. And it's like, really, that's it? You just made a lot of money, which is a lot of nothing. You're good at making a lot of nothing. Oh boy. All right, so enough of that. So this is it for tonight. Quick 40 minutes, 41 minutes in and out. I doubt I'll do one tonight. I like to listen to a lot of things, read a lot of things, and just kind of connect the thoughts. Isn't that funny? Dots and thoughts sound quite alike. All right, I'll see you guys later. Have a good night.